I never imagined that telling this story would make my chest feel so heavy, as if every word carried the weight of the secret I've been keeping. I am not proud of what happened, but I also can't deny that part of me is grateful for it. It was the kind of night that starts as nothing but ends as something you never forget, the kind of night that sneaks back into your mind when you least expect it, stirring emotions you thought you had buried. I should start with the truth. I am not her husband. I am not even someone who should have been in her life long enough to matter. And yet, I became the one who crossed the line with her, the one who witnessed the cracks in her marriage and stepped into them. She remains anonymous because her world, her family, her home, her children, all stayed untouched by what happened between us. Her husband never found out. To this day, no one in her close circle knows the details. But I do, and it is my confession. The night that set everything in motion. It was a humid evening, the kind where the air feels thick, pressing down on you like an invisible hand. I had been invited to a small gathering, not a party, more of a get-together at a mutual friend's house. I wasn't in the mood to go, but something in me resisted the idea of staying home alone. That's when I saw her. She wasn't trying to stand out, but she didn't need to. She had a way of holding herself, graceful but not rehearsed, casual yet magnetic. She laughed at something another woman said, tilting her head just enough for her hair to fall across her cheek. I remember feeling the room fade for a second. I shouldn't have stared, but my eyes betrayed me, and the next thing I knew, I was watching her lips form words I couldn't even hear. Her husband wasn't there. He rarely was, from what I would later learn. That absence wasn't just physical, it had left hollow spaces in her life, spaces I was about to stumble into. We were introduced later that evening, nothing formal, just the casual brush of hands and a smile that lingered a fraction of a second longer than it should have. "Nice to meet you," she said. Her voice was soft, like it carried a secret of its own. "You too," I replied, trying to keep my tone even, casual, normal. Inside, I felt something stir, a dangerous curiosity. Small conversations, hidden currents. The night wore on, and as people paired off into their own little circles, I found myself standing near her. She asked me a question, something simple about my work, and before I knew it, we were locked into a conversation that went deeper than small talk. She had this way of looking at me, as if she was actually listening, as if every word mattered. I told her about my travels, the cities I'd seen. She told me about her home, her kids, her busy life, and in the spaces between her words, I caught glimpses of loneliness. It wasn't loud or obvious, but it was there, like a faint outline that only someone really looking would notice. We didn't touch that night. We didn't even sit too close. But something was exchanged between us, not physical, not yet, but something undeniable. The kind of spark you try to brush off, only to realize it has already caught fire. The invitation. It was late when people started leaving. I was gathering my things, preparing to head out, when I felt a light touch on my arm. It was her. "Do you live far?" she asked casually, though her eyes betrayed more. "Not too far," I answered. "Good. Then maybe you can help me with something before you go." She didn't wait for me to answer, just turned and walked toward the side of the house where the dim porch light cast long shadows. I followed, my pulse quickening with every step. She led me to her car, where she struggled with the latch of her trunk. Something about the way she asked for help felt less about the trunk and more about testing a boundary. I fixed the issue easily, but neither of us made a move to end the moment. We stood there, too close, the night suddenly louder with silence. I could hear my own heartbeat, fast and reckless. Her eyes lifted to mine, and for the first time, the air between us shifted from casual to charged. She didn't smile. She just looked at me, steady, unblinking, as if waiting for me to do something, or daring me not to. I should have stepped back. I should have wished her good night and left. Instead, I froze, and in that pause, everything began. The first touch. Her hand brushed mine. Accident, maybe, but when neither of us pulled away, the accidental became intentional. Her skin was warm against mine, and I felt a rush of heat that climbed from my hand up to my chest. "Thank you," she said softly, though her tone was less gratitude and more something else, a whisper carrying weight. "You're welcome," I managed, my throat dry. For a moment, we just stood there, both of us balancing on the edge of something dangerous. Then she leaned closer, her shoulder grazing mine as she reached back to shut the trunk. It wasn't necessary for her to be that close, but she was. And I let her. The scent of her perfume was subtle, almost hidden, like she didn't want to be noticed but couldn't help but leave a trail. It filled my head, mixing with the pounding in my chest. And then it happened, the moment that would change everything. She turned her head slightly, and our eyes locked again, but this time, neither of us looked away. Her lips parted, just barely, and I swear I could feel the invitation before I even knew what I was doing. I kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forced. It was soft at first, hesitant, but the kind of kiss that carried all the words we couldn't say out loud. She didn't resist. She leaned into it, her hand finding my chest, steadying herself, or maybe steadying me. When we pulled back, there was a flicker of shock in her eyes, as if she had surprised herself. But instead of walking away, she whispered, "Not here." Her words hung between us, heavy and thrilling. The secret began. That night didn't end the way you might think. We didn't drive off together. We didn't slip away into some hidden room. No, we parted ways with a quiet understanding that what had just happened wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I drove home in silence, my body buzzing, my thoughts spinning. I knew what I had just done. I knew the risk. I knew she had a husband waiting for her somewhere, unaware of the spark she had just shared with another man. And yet, guilt didn't come right away. Desire did. Curiosity did. The image of her lips against mine replayed over and over, pulling me deeper into something I knew I wouldn't be able to stop. That night changed everything, not because of what we did, but because of what it unlocked. The hunger, the secrecy, the dangerous thrill of stepping into someone else's hidden life. And it was only the beginning. I didn't sleep much after that night. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't quiet down. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of our encounter, the brush of her hand against mine, the closeness of her body, the softness of her lips. It was maddening, like a film on repeat that refused to let me rest. Guilt should have drowned me. I should have woken up sick to my stomach, regretting every choice that led to that kiss. But I didn't. Instead, I woke up restless, craving more. There's something dangerous about realizing how alive you feel when you're standing on the edge of a mistake. I wasn't even sure if she'd reach out. Maybe the kiss had been a slip, a fleeting lapse in judgment that she'd already chosen to forget. Maybe she'd wake up beside her husband, kiss him good morning, and push me into the shadows of her memory. I tried to convince myself that was the outcome I wanted. Safer, cleaner, easier, but deep down, I wanted the opposite. The first message. 2 days later, it came. A simple message. No greeting, no explanation. Just, "We need to talk." My chest tightened as I read it over and over. My fingers hovered above the keyboard before I finally typed back, "Where?" She responded within minutes. "Not here. Somewhere private. Tomorrow. Tomorrow." The word hit me like a rush of adrenaline. This wasn't going to vanish into thin air. She wasn't going to pretend it hadn't happened. She wanted to see me again. We agreed on a small cafe just outside the city. Neutral ground. Quiet. Not the kind of place she'd risk being recognized. When the time came, I arrived early, restless, scanning every face that entered until she appeared. She walked in casually, sunglasses shielding her eyes, her hair pulled back. To anyone else, she looked like just another woman grabbing a coffee in the middle of her day. But to me, she was the secret I couldn't let go of. When she reached my table, she slid into the seat across from me, lowering her glasses. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was louder than words. Finally, she broke it. "That shouldn't have happened," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "You're right." She looked at me, searching for something in my expression. Maybe regret, maybe relief, but whatever she saw wasn't enough, because she leaned closer, her voice lower. "And yet, I can't stop thinking about it." Her words landed like a match on dry paper. My chest burned. The truth was out, and it was mutual. The unspoken agreement. We didn't talk about her husband. We didn't talk about morality, or the line we had already crossed. Instead, we sat there, sipping our coffee, pretending we were just two ordinary people having an ordinary conversation. But beneath the table, her foot brushed mine, lingering just long enough to erase the illusion. By the time we left the cafe, we had made an unspoken agreement. This wasn't ending. She slipped me an address, not her home, not mine, but a rented apartment she sometimes used when she needed space. "Tomorrow," she said, 8 o'clock, and just like that, the stage was set. The waiting, the next 24 hours were torture. Every hour crawled, every minute stretched thin. I couldn't focus on work. Couldn't focus on anything. My phone buzzed more than once with messages from friends, coworkers, but none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was her. I thought about what it meant. About the risk, the consequences, the weight of the secret we were about to create. But those thoughts didn't stop me. If anything, they pushed me further, like a dare I couldn't refuse. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror longer than I should have, second-guessing my shirt, my hair, even the way I smelled. It felt foolish, almost teenage in its nervousness. But that's what she did to me, stripped me down to raw nerves, made me feel like a man standing at the edge of discovery and desire. The apartment. When I arrived, the street was quiet. She had chosen well. Discreet, ordinary, a place that gave nothing away. I climbed the narrow staircase, my pulse thundering in my ears. The door opened before I even knocked. She was there, framed in the doorway, wearing something simple, jeans and a fitted top, but it didn't matter. The way she looked at me made every detail irrelevant. "Come in," she said, her voice steady, though her eyes betrayed the storm inside. I stepped inside. The apartment was small, barely furnished, but it wasn't about the decor. It was about the silence, the isolation, the fact that here, no one knew us. No one could see. The door clicked shut behind me, and with it, the last thread of restraint seemed to snap. The tension breaks. For a moment, we just stood there, facing each other, the air between us charged. Then she moved, fast, deliberate. She closed the space between us and pressed her lips to mine, harder this time, no hesitation. I responded instantly, my hands finding her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss was fire, hungry, the kind that erases thought. She pressed against me, her fingers digging into my shoulders as if anchoring herself. I don't know who pulled who first, but soon we were stumbling toward the couch, lips never breaking, hands exploring in frantic urgency. Every touch, every sigh, every movement carried the weight of all the nights she had been untouched, unseen. And I couldn't hold back. Crossing the line, she whispered my name between kisses, breathless, urgent. I felt her trembling, not with fear, but with something deeper, something long suppressed. I kissed her harder, letting the dam inside me break. Her body melted into mine, her hands roaming, her lips hot against my neck. The world outside ceased to exist. There was no husband, no home, no consequence. Just us. When she pulled back, her eyes locked on mine. "Do you know how long it's been since I've felt this alive?" She whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just kissed her again, deeper, harder, as if answering with my body instead of words. And that was the moment. The one where everything we had been holding back shattered. The line was crossed, fully, completely. There was no going back. When it was over, we lay there in silence, her head resting on my chest, both of us catching our breath. The room smelled of sweat and perfume, the kind of scent that lingers long after the act is done. I should have felt guilt then. I should have thought about the man waiting at home for her, the life she'd return to as if nothing happened. But all I felt was her heartbeat against mine, steady and real. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. She lifted her head, meeting my gaze. There was no regret in her eyes, only a quiet intensity. "I needed this," she whispered. More than I realized. Her words echoed inside me, and though I knew we were stepping into dangerous territory, I also knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something bigger, darker, and far harder to control. That night, when I finally left the apartment, the streets felt different. The air felt charged, my body was heavy with what we had done, and yet, part of me felt lighter. I knew I was carrying a secret now, one that would follow me like a shadow. But I also knew one thing with certainty, she wouldn't be able to stop. And neither would I. The first time was supposed to be the only time. At least that's what we told ourselves when we finally broke apart in that small apartment, both of us breathless, our clothes clinging to damp skin. I remember her looking at me, her lips still swollen from my kiss, whispering, "This can't happen again." But even then, I knew she didn't believe her own words. And neither did I, because the truth was, once the line was crossed, the world no longer looked the same. I couldn't go back to pretending she was just another woman I had met by chance. She wasn't. She was the secret that made my blood rush, the shadow I craved in the daylight, the memory that refused to let me rest at night. And she wanted me just as much. A secret rhythm. It didn't take long for us to fall into a rhythm of stolen hours, careful texts, and lies told to protect what we were doing. I stopped asking myself whether it was right. I stopped caring. All I knew was that when her name lit up on my phone, everything else in my world became secondary. She would text me things like, "I can't stop thinking about last night," or, "Can you get away tomorrow?" And with every message, my pulse quickened. I became addicted, not just to her body, but to the thrill, the danger, the feeling of being wanted in a way that was almost desperate. We met in that same apartment at first, always careful, always checking over our shoulders before slipping inside. She was meticulous about details, making sure she didn't smell of my cologne. Keeping her hair neat so it didn't betray the time spent tangled in my hands. I admired her precision even as I despised what it meant, that she had someone else to go home to. But when we were together, none of that mattered. The way she changed, there was something about her in those moments that felt different from the woman I had first met. Around others, she was composed, polite, the picture of a dutiful wife and mother. With me, she unraveled. She laughed louder. She swore under her breath. She let herself be reckless in a way I don't think she ever allowed at home. "I feel like myself with you," she whispered once, lying beside me in the dim light of the apartment. I traced a finger along her shoulder, watching the goosebumps rise. "And who are you with him?" Her eyes darkened. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I realized then that I wasn't just giving her an escape. I was giving her a reflection of who she used to be, before marriage, before responsibility weighed her down. And in return, she gave me something too, a sense of being chosen, desired, needed in a way that was raw and consuming. The second apartment, it was her idea to change locations. "We can't keep using the same place," she said one evening after we'd tangled ourselves in each other yet again. "It's too risky." So she found another apartment, more hidden, less obvious. It became our place, the sanctuary where we stripped away our facades along with our clothes. The bed was small, the windows covered with thick curtains, the air always a little too warm. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the way she would look at me as soon as the door closed, as if the world outside had ceased to exist. And every time, I swore I wouldn't lose control. Every time, I told myself I'd pace it, that I'd hold back. But the truth is, I couldn't. She had a way of undoing me with just a glance, a brush of her lips, a whisper of my name. That night, I realized something dangerous. I wasn't just addicted to her body. I was addicted to the secrecy, the lies, the thrill of knowing we were playing with fire and choosing to burn anyway. The confession I never expected. One evening, as we lay tangled in sheets that smelled of us, she turned to me with a look that was both vulnerable and fierce. "Do you ever wonder what would happen if we were caught?" she asked softly. The question froze me. I hadn't let myself think that far. Or maybe I had, but I buried it under layers of desire. "I try not to," I admitted. She studied me for a long moment, then said, "I don't think I'd regret it." Her words landed heavy in my chest. I kissed her then, hard, not because it was the right response, but because I didn't know how else to answer. The truth was, I didn't know if I'd regret it either. Living double lives. Outside those walls, life went on. She played her role as the perfect wife, the attentive mother, the charming friend. I carried on with my work, my responsibilities, my public self. But beneath it all, we carried the weight of our secret. Every glance across a crowded room, every, innocent, brush of her hand when no one was watching, every shared look that lasted 1 second too long, all of it fed the fire. Sometimes, I'd catch her looking at me when we were around others. Just for a split second. But in that second, I could feel everything we were hiding. We were walking a tightrope, balancing between desire and disaster. And the longer it went on, the more reckless we became. The night he called, there was one night I'll never forget. We were in the middle of each other, sweat slick against our skin, when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. We both froze. She glanced at the screen and went pale. "It's him," she whispered. "Her husband." I waited, holding my breath, while she answered. Her voice was calm, steady, rehearsed. She talked about groceries, about the kids, about when she'd be home. Not once did her voice waver, even though my body was still pressed against hers, our secret lingering in the air between us. When she hung up, she looked at me with wide eyes, then laughed, a nervous, breathless laugh that quickly turned into something darker. "Do you see how close we are to disaster?" she whispered, and then, instead of pulling away, she kissed me harder than ever, as if the brush with danger only made her hunger grow. That night, I understood something new. It wasn't just about me. It was about the risk itself. She was alive in the secrecy, in the danger, in the knowledge that she could walk back into her life carrying a truth no one else knew. And I was the man she trusted to carry it with her. The addiction. By now, weeks had turned into months. The more we met, the harder it became to imagine stopping. It wasn't just lust anymore, it was routine, ritual, a need as urgent as food or air. I thought about her constantly. In meetings, in the shower, in the middle of conversations with other people. Sometimes I'd catch myself reaching for my phone just to see her name, to reassure myself she was still there, still choosing me. I knew it was dangerous. I knew we were building something on a foundation of lies that could collapse at any moment. But I also knew one thing with brutal clarity: I didn't want to stop. And deep down, neither did she. The whisper that changed everything. One evening, as she lay beside me, her head on my chest, she whispered something that made my heart stop. What if we didn't have to hide? I didn't answer right away. The question hung heavy in the air, heavier than anything we had shared before. Because as much as I wanted her, as much as I craved her, the reality of that thought was terrifying. Did she mean leaving him? Did she mean choosing me? Did she mean shattering her world, and mine, for the sake of this forbidden connection? I didn't know, but the question itself was enough to shake me. Because it meant one thing: this wasn't just an affair anymore. This was becoming something neither of us could control. And deep down, I knew the night she said those words was the night everything truly changed. The night she whispered, "What if we didn't have to hide?" Left me haunted. Her words followed me into my sleep, into my workdays, into the quiet moments when I should have been focused on something else. It was the first time she had spoken the thought out loud, the possibility of us stepping out of the shadows. Part of me thrilled at it. The idea of her choosing me, of her breaking free from the man she went home to every night, made my chest tighten with a dangerous kind of hope. But another part of me recoiled. Because if there's one thing I'd learned, it was that secrets were powerful only when they remained hidden. If we stepped into the light, everything would collapse. Living in two worlds. The longer the affair went on, the more I began to feel like I was living two lives. In one, I was the same man everyone knew, responsible, steady, predictable. In the other, I was reckless, consumed, driven by the hunger of forbidden love. And the more time I spent with her, the harder it became to separate the two. She started calling me late at night, her voice hushed, as though she was standing in the hallway outside her bedroom. "I can't sleep," she'd whisper. "Are you thinking about me?" Of course I was. I always was. Sometimes she'd slip away in the middle of the afternoon, telling her husband she had errands to run. Those afternoons were electric, urgent, stolen. She'd arrive at our place already breathless, her hair messy from rushing, her lips eager before the door even closed. It was dangerous, every minute of it, and yet, the more dangerous it became, the deeper we sank. The first close call. It happened on a Saturday. She had convinced her husband she was spending the day with a friend, and we had stolen the hours like greedy thieves. But when she left to go home, her shirt carried the faintest trace of my cologne. She told me about it the next day, her voice sharp with panic. "He almost noticed," she whispered. "He asked if I had changed perfumes." I had to laugh it off. Her hands shook as she lit a cigarette, a habit she usually kept buried. "Do you realize how close that was?" she asked, exhaling smoke into the warm night air. I nodded, but instead of fear, I felt an odd rush of adrenaline. It was proof of how close we were to being caught. Proof that what we had was real enough to almost break through the surface of her perfect life. And as much as I hated myself for it, I wanted more. The jealousy I never expected. It should have been simple. I knew she had a husband. I knew she would go home to him every night. That was the unspoken rule of what we were doing. But the deeper I sank, the harder it became to accept. One evening, after we'd been together, she told me about a dinner she and her husband had attended. She described the way he laughed with old friends, the way he touched her back casually, possessively, as if reminding the room that she belonged to him. The words ignited something ugly inside me. Jealousy. I tried to mask it, but she noticed. "Don't," she said firmly. "You knew what this was." "I know," I admitted, my jaw tight. "But that doesn't make it easier." She cupped my face in her hands then, forcing me to meet her gaze. "You have me here. Isn't that enough?" It should have been, but it wasn't, because I didn't just want her in secret anymore. I wanted her in the open. And that realization terrified me. The argument, our first real argument, came not long after. She canceled one of our meetings at the last minute. Something about her husband deciding to stay home unexpectedly. Rationally, I understood, but emotionally, I was furious. The thought of him being there with her, in the same house, in the same bed, while I sat alone waiting, gnawed at me. When she called later to explain, I snapped. Do you have any idea what it does to me? I demanded, waiting, knowing he's there with you. Her silence stretched across the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. Don't do this. Don't make me choose. Her words cut through my anger, replacing it with guilt. Because I knew she was right. I wasn't supposed to demand anything. I wasn't supposed to want more. And yet, I did. The pull of danger. The argument should have made us pull back. Instead, it pushed us closer. When we finally saw each other again, the air between us was charged with a mix of anger and hunger. She kissed me like she was trying to erase the fight, like she was daring me to never question her again. I kissed her back with equal force, my hands gripping her like I couldn't stand the thought of losing her. That night, our passion bordered on violent, urgent, raw, unrestrained. It was as if the fight had unlocked a new layer of us, one where love and anger blurred until neither of us could tell the difference. When it was over, she lay against me, her breathing ragged. Do you see what you do to me? She whispered. I didn't answer. I just held her tighter, because I was terrified of what her absence would feel like. The growing risk. We became reckless after that. We met more often, took bigger risks. Sometimes we met in public, though we never touched, never gave away our secret. But the looks we exchanged across the room said everything. I remember one night vividly, a gathering much like the one where we first met. Her husband was there this time, standing beside her, his hand resting casually on her waist. And yet, across the room, her eyes found mine. For a brief moment, the world faded, just like it had that very first night. My chest pounded, my palms went damp, and I felt the rush of our secret pulse between us. Then her husband leaned down and whispered something in her ear, making her laugh. The sound cut me deeper than I expected. I realized then that this wasn't just a game anymore. My emotions were no longer something I could control. And when she slipped away later that evening, texting me from the bathroom, meet me tomorrow. I need you. I knew we were teetering on the edge of disaster. Walking on fire. Every day that passed felt like walking on fire. One misstep, one wrong word, one careless scent or stain or mark, and everything would explode. But neither of us stopped. In fact, the closer we came to being discovered, the harder it became to resist. We weren't just making love anymore. We were daring the world to catch us. And deep down, I think we both knew it was only a matter of time before something happened that would change everything, again. Morning light poured in through the blinds like an accusation. I woke up with her hair still across my chest, her leg tangled with mine, the sheets heavy with the scent of what we had done. For a long time, I didn't move. I just stared at the ceiling, the pounding in my head not from alcohol this time but from the weight of reality pressing down on me. I could feel her breathing, slow and deep, like she was finally resting after carrying something heavy for years. She looked younger, softer, as if giving in to what we both craved had peeled away layers of exhaustion and sadness. A part of me wanted to stay frozen in that moment forever. But another part, the part that knew husbands existed, promises were broken, and choices carried consequences, was already stirring with guilt. I gently untangled myself from her body and stood, pulling on my clothes in silence. The clock read a little past 6. I thought about slipping out, disappearing before she even opened her eyes, convincing myself this night could be folded away like a dream. But as I bent to pick up my shirt, her hand slid across my back, soft and deliberate. You were going to leave without saying anything. Her voice was hoarse from sleep, yet sharp enough to slice through my hesitation. I froze, then turned. She sat up, sheets falling around her shoulders, hair messy, eyes searching mine. There was no shame in her face, no panic, just a strange calm that almost unsettled me more than if she had broken down crying. I thought maybe it would be easier, I admitted. For who? She asked. That single question hit harder than anything else. For who? For me, so I wouldn't have to deal with the messy aftermath. For her, so she could pretend it never happened. Or for the man sleeping in her house, oblivious to what his wife had done a few miles away. I sat back down on the edge of the bed, burying my face in my hands. I don't know how to live with what we did. She moved closer, her bare shoulder brushing against mine. I've been living with what I didn't do for years. Pretending, dying a little every day in silence. Last night, I felt alive again. And I won't apologize for that. Her words lodged deep inside me. I wanted to argue, to say that being alive came with costs neither of us could afford, but instead, I just looked at her. The honesty in her eyes was undeniable. She hadn't been caught, and maybe she never would be. She wasn't looking for someone to save her, she just wanted to feel like a woman again, not a shadow in her own life. The rest of the morning unfolded quietly. We showered together, not with the hunger of the night before but with a slow, lingering tenderness, as though we both knew this might be the last time. By the time I left her apartment, the city was awake, streets buzzing with people who had no idea what lines we had crossed just hours earlier. The following days were chaos inside me. Every sound of my phone buzzing made my heart race. What if it was her husband? What if he had found out? Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the feel of her lips, the way her nails dug into my skin, the way she whispered my name like it meant something. Guilt and desire wrestled inside me, and neither was willing to surrender. We didn't see each other for 2 weeks after that night. But the silence didn't feel like distance, it felt like an unspoken agreement. Like we were letting the fire cool before it consumed everything. When she finally called, her voice was steady. "Do you regret it?" she asked me. I hesitated, because the truth wasn't simple. I regret that it happened the way it did, but I don't regret you. That answer hung in the air between us. I didn't know if it was the right one, but it was the only one I could give. She sighed, a mix of relief and sadness. Then we both know this isn't over. Maybe it shouldn't have started. But now that it has, it won't be the last time. And she was right. That night didn't end anything, it began something neither of us could predict. Something hidden in the cracks of our lives, something dangerous yet irresistible. I stayed anonymous, I stayed in the shadows, because some truths never see daylight. But I can tell you this much, one night of surrender can ripple into a lifetime of secrets. And once the line is crossed, there's no going back. Disclaimer: this story is a true infidelity confession told from the perspective of the narrator. Names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. It is intended for a mature audience only. The purpose of sharing is not to encourage betrayal but to shed light on the hidden realities of relationships that many keep in silence. This story reveals the hidden side of forbidden desire, guilt, and choices we never imagine ourselves making until the moment comes. Told from the male narrator's anonymous perspective, it explores how one night of surrender changed 2 lives forever. She was never caught by her husband, and she chose to remain silent, but what they shared couldn't be erased. He couldn't hold back, and that night changed everything. Isn't just about infidelity, it's about what happens when silence breaks, when unmet needs collide with temptation, and when love and betrayal blur into one dangerous secret. If this story held you spellbound, make sure you subscribe for more true infidelity stories. Each one takes you deeper into real experiences of passion, betrayal, and secrets that people rarely dare to confess. Don't miss the next one.